Hey friends, if you had a chance to listen to the last episode, you got to meet my good friend Stephanie Pazniokas as she interviewed me. But we're turning the tables today. We're turning them back around, putting me in the host seat, and I'm going to be talking with her about all the things that she has coming up and her amazing shift from neuroscience to wellness coach. And she's the founder of SJP Health and Wellness, where metabolism meets mindset. And she helps busy women reclaim energy, stabilize their blood sugar, and feel confident in their bodies using her signature boss mode framework. She combines brain science, biochemistry, and real-life tools to make sustainable health feel simple and doable without dieting, without calorie counting, and without guilt. Doesn't that sound incredible? Whether you're juggling work, parenting, or perimenopause, she teaches you how to tune into your body, trust yourself, and take back your wellness. Stephanie's clients walk away feeling clear-headed, energized, and empowered to live boss on their terms. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome to the Lemon Balm Coaching Podcast, your cozy corner of the world where we'll sip on life's lessons and squeeze the most out of every moment. I'm Melissa, your coach, cheerleader, and maybe even a little bit like that mom who always has a warm hug and the best advice waiting for you. If you're a woman over 40, feeling like life's left you a little lost, aimless, or downright stuck, you're in the right place. This is where your joy, your freedom, and your purpose come back into focus. Together, we'll laugh, learn, and rediscover what makes you come alive, because it's not too late. This is your time. So grab a cup of something warm, settle in, and let's start creating the next most beautiful chapter of your life together. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me on the Lemon Balm Coaching Podcast. We actually met in person just a few months ago for the very first time. We had Zoomed before, and I knew of you, you knew of me. But when we met at this retreat that we both attended, it was like, for me at least, it was like, oh my gosh, I found a long lost sister. It just felt like an immediate connection, and what you do and what I do are just, I feel like a perfect marriage of health and life coaching. So thank you so much for joining me, being willing to come on and share with my listeners.
It is my absolute pleasure. And I have to tell you, I felt like I almost became a fangirl when we met. I was just like, oh my gosh, I love you. And I feel like I've known you forever. And every time we said the next thing, it's like, oh my gosh, me too. Oh, and have you ever done? Yes. And I mean, our favorite books, everything. And I thought, how are we only just meeting in life now, and it doesn't even feel like it just happened? And so I'm glad that was the same, because it was quite amazing, and I'm so excited to know that you're in my life. Period. End of story. You don't get a choice. So
and it's true though. You never know. Like you meet somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with them. They are the most amazing person ever. Oh, I hope they feel the same about me.
I know, right? It's so funny, but I am really, really happy to be here, and I love. I love the science and the health and all of those sorts of things, and truly what you and I do are two sides of the same coin, and they're not they're just inextricable. Like you just can't have one without the other. So I love it.
Absolutely agree. Now, one of the things that I think is very, very important is the story. So the very first question I love to ask my guests is, how in the world did you end up here doing what you're doing in the wellness field?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I'll try to keep that a little abbreviated, but I think apropos to the kind of work that you do, I need to go back a little bit before the start and talk a little bit about my childhood, which was the best my mom could do at the time. My parents were divorced when I was 4. That's a tough age for a child who's in the process of bonding to lose any parent. It's a tough time. So I had a lot of that on my heart for a long time. It took a long time for me to understand that there was a root cause involved in that. I used to have nightmares all the time throughout childhood, all the way up until past puberty, of being abandoned and having my family want to kill me, things like that. Like all of the people I love turning against me. And I didn't know where that was from for a very long time. But my mom had, I'd born in Massachusetts. My mom actually took me away from the rest of the family and me and my brother and sister down to Florida. We didn't have a lot of money, and I was often hungry. And when I did have an opportunity to eat other people's food or go to a buffet or something like that, I overdid it I'm surprised my stomach didn't just burst, because I didn't know when that kind of food was going to be available again. And when we did go out to eat, which was occasional, we'd go out to like a pizza place, or we'd go to some what I thought were fancy restaurants. Now I know they're not terribly fancy, but they were fancy to me. And I would have such great anxiety. I couldn't even make a choice on the menu and everybody just said, well, here it is, a half an hour for Stephanie to figure out what she wants to eat, because I was afraid I would get the wrong thing and I would never have a chance to have it again, to have the right thing. You know what I'm saying? So I just had all this anxiety around it. So anyway, fast forward to I am now an adult and I'm making money and I have the ability to buy my own food. Can you imagine what might have happened? Can you imagine what might have happened when I had a job where I had to travel all the time and I had to eat out on the company dime and I would just order whatever? So, but let me tell you a little bit more about that traveling job, because I loved it. I loved the job. I loved what I did, but it was a very high stress job. I had to travel a lot. I was traveling multiple times per month, anywhere from 2-day trip to a 14-day trip was my longest. I had 3 small children, and my husband was often left home taking care of them. I missed potty training my youngest entirely. And so I was always trying to travel back home to be with them. And it got to the point where I had no time or energy to hang out with my friends. I couldn't even go to church anymore, because the one Sunday a month I could go, it was because I had to be in nursery because my kids were in nursery and I had no choice but to volunteer. So I stopped going to church because I couldn't even go to the service. And I was alone. I was drinking too much wine at the time. That was my de-stressor. And my body was literally falling apart. So over that 7 years, and even before that, because when I had my son, I ate a lot of McDonald's and I gained like 70 pounds with him. And people thought I was having 3. I had to sell my car. I couldn't get behind the wheel. So I'm not a very tall person, as you found. I'm only 5'3", and I eventually, over the course of time, ended up at around about 190 pounds. So I was officially obese, and I had pre-diabetes. I had high blood pressure. I had cankles on a permanent basis because I was flying all the time, and I did not have a lot of good circulation. I couldn't stand for very long, but our trade shows required me to stand for 5 days in a row. So I was, and my lower back hurt. I was very stressed. I didn't sleep well because I was in hotels a lot. There's just a huge amount of stress. So all of this just meant my body was breaking down. And I know that this is similar to your story in a little bit of a different way, because, maybe the root cause of the reason why our bodies were breaking down may be a slightly different. Ultimately, they were breaking down. And this is a really important point I want to make, because it's actually, I think, what we're going to be talking a lot about today. That's all kind of how I ended up sick. But this is the thing. My background is in psychobiology, biochemistry, neuroscience, anatomy, and physiology. And the 7 years I was with that life science job, keeping organs alive outside of the body for research, and knowing I had to know all of the organ systems. I had to understand how everything worked. I had a lot of scientific knowledge about how the body is supposed to work, and I learned a lot about how it was supposed to work. But when it came to my health, that was my career, and then this is my health. And for whatever reason, and this kind of all kinds of happens as we grow up and we sort of just believe a lot of the things that we're being indoctrinated with. I thought, well, to lose weight, you eat less and move more. And I didn't really think about the effect that stress was having on my body, the fact that lack of sleep was having on my body. I just knew that I had a lot of anxiety and I was freaking tired, right? And I wasn't connecting it to all of the lifestyle factors that were going to, except that I knew that it was my job. Like, I knew that it was killing me. I just didn't see a way out. And honestly, the way out took a miracle from God. I'm not going to lie about that one. But it so it got to the point though when that miracle happened and I switched jobs at a completely different field that I had no business being in but excelled at. It just by the grace of God, they had a Biggest Loser contest and I did everything wrong. I lost the weight, but I did it all wrong. So you know what happens when you do that, when you eat less and move more and kill yourself, it all comes back and your body gets stressed and more. And so fortunately it wasn't at the end more, but I was right back up at 175 over and over and over again. And eventually I said, why am I trying to do this the way everybody else says to do it? It clearly doesn't work. If it worked, none of us would have a problem in the world because we are all doing it. And in fact, studies show that people are exercising, they are moving, they're doing all the things that people tell them to do. It's just that those things don't actually solve the problem.
Right.
They're short-term fixes that create a metabolic adaptation that our body is so brilliant that it says, oh, I don't know that there's going to be consistent energy in the world for me, so I am going to become super efficient, and I'm going to lower the energy availability to this person. They can sit on the couch, it's fine. They don't need to move, and I'll store extra when it happens, and I'll make sure I gain weight. And it's energy conservation. Like our body is just like, oh, I'm just going to adapt for survival. It doesn't care about a beach body.
Okay, you covered so much. So much. There's one thing I just looked up. Okay. I typed it in, Googled it just like we do. The weight loss industry right now is worth over $200 billion a year.
Yes.
And they're projecting $896 billion by 2035.
Yeah. Largely due to the drugs. Yeah.
Largely due to the drugs, but also because what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. And we've been sold this lie that eat less, move more.
I don't think it really works for anybody long term. I mean, somebody might look thin. That doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy on the inside.
Yes.
All right. Totally. So I know somebody, I've had clients who ate less and moved more and looked this big and were having so many symptoms of inflammation in their body and pain and hot flashes and everything else because they were dipping into their essential fat stores and their body was absolutely panicking and they looked perfect.
I know those people as well, and they're miserable.
So I'm not sure, and they are miserable because the brain isn't working well either because of the lack of fat in the body. Like there's a lot going on.
So much.
So I would argue that eat less, move more really just doesn't work for anybody because weight isn't the real. And weight is a symptom that some people get and others don't.
Right. Well, I just wanted to encourage anybody listening, like if you hear Stephanie's story and you're like, wow, that's kind of similar to mine. I mean, I think there are more people who have a story like ours because the more I'm listening to you, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my sister from a different mister for real. Like one of the things that I said, and I said this so long ago and it's still in my brain, I will know I've made it in life when I can go to the grocery store without a list. And I can just buy whatever I want. So food is a huge, huge thing. It's so big. It's so big. It's not something we can just gloss over. And the beliefs that we have, the thoughts that we have around food, around eating, around weight, around our looks, around all of those things, they matter. So like if you're hearing Stephanie's story, if you've heard my story, like you're in the right place. You're in the right place.
Yeah. And I have to say, the real straw that broke the camel's back when I decided to when I changed my job and then this Biggest Loser contest, right when all this was happening. I mean, like I said, there was a whole situation that happened all at the same time. I feel like God, I was like a baby kitten and the mom just picks them up by the scruff of the neck and puts them over there. And I feel like that's what happened and it had to happen. And because I didn't want to be with my husband. I didn't want him to have the light on. I didn't want to see myself. I have hardly any pictures of myself at the time. I was so embarrassed to exist on the planet in my body, as if that meant anything about my self-worth. And it doesn't. And I think that's the big thing. Yes, it matters. I used to think, well, I'm just going to do this for a little while and then I can go back to eating normal. Normal is what got me sick in the first place. So there is no such thing. But what happened in my whole entire journey is that I changed what I wanted in the store. I do buy whatever I want in the store. What I want is different.
Right.
And it's truly what I want. So that all being said is I figured out how all this was going to work. I figured out what worked for me. I did it on my own because I'm a researcher, because I'm a scientist. I was able to go back to the papers. I was able to read them. I'm able to read very, very complicated things and understand them, distill them, and whatnot. So I was able to do that for me. But I was like, how is anybody else going to do this? I had ended up in a startup in this other industry, and I was working 80 hours a week. And I thought, I just really can't do this. And some other changes were happening in the company that I wasn't really thrilled with. I think God allowed the situation to get very uncomfortable because my mom then got diagnosed with cancer. My daughter was having issues. I needed to be there. And my mom had maybe a year left to live. And I needed to not be working 80 hours a week. I needed to take care of her. I needed to take care of my daughter because I found out she was pregnant. And I said, what if I'm starting over? What lights me up? What am I passionate about? What do I care about? And I have a serious nerdy geeky bone.
Mm-hmm.
I love the science. But I also have this drive to help people. I really want to help people. And I helped myself in this way. And I felt this big hole here. And I thought, is there such thing as like a nutrition coach or a health coach or something like that? And I looked it up, and lo and behold, it was there. And 2 days before my birthday, I'm sitting down, and I ended up going with Precision Nutrition. I'm now a PN2 certified master health coach on my way to national board certification in health and wellness coaching. So that's just a process. I'm just still in that process.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a master health coach. And that particular program was closing its wait list. Like it was closing for enrollment. It's got very tight enrollment periods on my birthday. And I thought, all right,
a little bit of a sign.
A little bit, but everything about it was what I needed. So I was very thrilled with that. And I had said, okay, well, in the next year, I'm gonna start my business. And then I started Waffle, and I was gonna be like, well, maybe I'll still consult, maybe I'll still do this. I was nervous about walking away from our income, but honestly, I'm so passionate about this. I am so blessed to be able to help the women that I help, because every single one of them ultimately ends up realizing it's not all about weight, that weight is a side effect of a body out of, I'd say, balance. There is no balance. There's a homeostasis.
I say harmony. It's like a body out of harmony, because all of our systems are meant to function together. And when they're not functioning together, it's disharmony.
Yeah, it's disharmony. And there is a balance. There is a homeostasis, but it's in so many ways. Our body has so many checks and balances, and so many of us are out of whack. It's like when it's really just a really complicated thing that when you throw a wrench in it, it all goes off.
What's the wrench?
I'm going to tell you what I believe the wrench is. And I think that there's a lot of research out there that suggests this is the wrench. And I'll get into why. I'd love for you to challenge it. I'd love for you to say, well, what about this? Does that count as that wrench? Does this count as that wrench? And then we'll see. Maybe you'll trip me up. I don't know. This could be fun. Stress.
Mm-hmm. And stress is a buzzword. Stress is a buzzword. We get that. We get that.
I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes.
Stress isn't just a feeling. It's not just what's going on in your head. It's not just feeling anxious about something. When I'm talking about stress, I am talking about the original definition is stress being anything that throws your body out of homeostasis. Okay, and homeostasis is balance. Okay, that's just the scientific word for a balance that exists in your body. There's lots of kinds of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the kinds of stress I'm about to mention ultimately will throw off the little canary in the coal mine inside of every single one of our cells. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of them throughout our body. It's called mitochondria. Mitochondria are those little cellular energy engines inside each of our cells that keep us alive and going. That's how I can move. I can move and think and everything because of my mitochondria. Mitochondria have two states. cell defense mode, under stress, activated by all the kinds of stress that I'm going to be talking about, and energy production.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a whole bunch of them in your body, and how you feel and how your body, how diseased you are has to do a lot with what proportion of those mitochondria are in one mode or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know I'm getting sciencey here, but trust me that if you just think about the fact that your body has the ability to produce energy or to produce inflammation. When a mitochondria is in a stressed state, in a threatened state, its job is to create additional inflammation in the body to prepare your body to react to the stressor in the world. And I'm going to give you guys a little quiz because there's a number of different stresses that you can have. It isn't just any one of those that cause the problem. It's when what we call the allostatic stress load, the total amount of stress in your body, exceeds your ability to heal from it. Your ability to, so your stress exceeds your healing. And so now you're no longer in harmony. And you experience that in all the ways, everything that Melissa, that you work on with your clients. When they're in those states, that is a high stress state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a lot of times these are, that could be an existential stress, right? Hopelessness, despair, lack of meaning, on that spiritual side or existential side. Could be an emotional stress from grief, anger, shame, fear, traumas that maybe we don't even remember. A mental stress, right? My job created a huge amount of mental stress, a huge amount of emotional stress, a huge amount of social stress, because social stress is all about your relationships, loneliness, rejection, lack of community. All right, that's a real thing. And let me tell you, when we talk about the psychosocial stress area, emotional, existential, social, and mental, there are over 70,000 research papers that show how that type of stress creates oxidative stress in our bodies that affects our mitochondria. So this is a real connection. This stuff's not just in your head or your heart, it's in your cells. That's one part. Then there's environmental stress, pollution, noise, toxins, violence in your area, an unsafe environment to live in, plastics, getting microplastics, like anything like that, like environmental stress. There's also physical stress, but physical stress is things like injury. These are obvious. Injury, illness, viral or bacterial, parasitic, overtraining, overexercising, lack of sleep, undernutrition, undereating, or eating things that cause problems in your body, poor gut health, a compromised gut from medications, a lot of medications or illnesses or other things. There's so many things. Stress compromises your gut.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of things that cause a breakdown in the tight junction in your gut. When that happens, that inflammation goes up in your body. Now you've got systemic inflammation. Now you've got stress that happens in your cells, right? So all of this stress, if you were to say, rate each area of the stress, I'm going to say them again, and I want you to write down on a piece of paper on a scale of 1 to 7 what you feel your level of stress is in each of these areas. 7 being high, 1 being low. And then we're going to add them up at the end, and we're going to say if you're in the green, yellow, or red danger zones, okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
On your allostatic stress load, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, we're going to start with an easy one. Environmental stress. This is how safe you are. For example, if you live in an inner city in a very poor area and there's a lot of violence and you don't know if there's going to be a gunshot when you walk out the door and there's noise everywhere and trains and smog and whatever, that's poor environmental stress. If you're in an abusive home, or if you're in a home that is very unclean, right? Or have a lot of animals that aren't kept after, and not all of these things are in our control, and some, but that is where we're looking at. If you feel very safe and your environment is clean and orderly and non-chaotic, and you've got a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food in your house, and you're feeling safe and secure, then you've got low environmental stress. Okay, so that's a scale of 1 to 7. Now let's get into social stress. Are you lonely? Do you feel like there's a lot of rejection from others around you? Do you have a lot of stress in your relationships with people? Could be work stress, like work relationships as well, with your manager, with other people, coworkers. If you have a lack of community, you're not involved, you don't see friends, you don't have that kind of social support, then you've got a high social stress, which is about, closer to a 7, right? I was definitely high on the social stress back in the day. One is I'm completely supported by my community. I'm very involved. Maybe you're involved in a church or a group of people at an assisted living home, or you're living in a dorm. But do you have a strong social group and friends, and even within your house and closeness with your family? Then we've got existential stress. Okay, so a 7 is hopelessness, despair, a lack of meaning. I don't believe there's any purpose in my life. I don't know why I'm on planet Earth. I don't care about getting up every day, right? And sometimes people can feel that this is very similar to depression, and in fact, this can be a root of a lot of depressive symptoms when you don't feel like you have any reason. It's such a high level of existential stress. You might not think that that matters, but your body sees that as a threat. For what it's worth, on a 1, very low existential stress, you feel that you have a purpose in this world. You believe that you were created for a reason. You believe that there is something more and bigger than you, that is a rock, that's a foundation that doesn't move, that you can rely on, that you have a meaning, that there's a meaning to your life. And whether or not you believe in God, or if you believe that that meaning is somewhere else, but that it's something that you can hold on to that doesn't move and that is a rock. Emotional stress, again, I said that grief, anger, shame, fear, trauma, loss. Well, that grief, that loss, so there's that emotional stress. Obviously, 1 is I don't feel a lot of those, negative feelings. I'm not there most of the time. 7, I'm there all the time. Like every day I'm an emotional stress ball, right? And again, lots of these things can happen at the same time. And we've got mental stress. So mental stress is interesting. You're like, how's that different from emotional stress? It is, because we're talking about things like this freneticness in your mind. You're all over the place. You're very, very busy. You've got decision fatigue. You like, if somebody asks you something at the end of the day and you're like, oh my God, don't ask me another question. I don't care. Your battery in your brain is just empty. Your information overload, your eyes are glossing over at the end of the day. You've got perfectionism. Perfectionism is a huge driver of mental stress. In the old-fashioned talk of type A personalities tend toward mental stress.
Mm-hmm.
I used to call myself a workaholic, perfectionist, people pleaser. There's a lot of mental stress when you're putting that kind of pressure on yourself to be all the things to everybody in the world.
Yeah.
So again, all these are on a scale of 1 to 7. Physical stress is the last one. Injury, like you've got an injury, or especially if it's chronic, you might have an illness, like you might have scoliosis, you might have a chronic immune issue, you may have any kind of physical issue or any kind of chronic pain. Poor sleep is part of that physical stress. Improper exercise, so overtraining, undereating, undernourishing and underfueling your body, or inappropriate fueling. So if we don't have enough vitamins and minerals and the most essential nutrients in our body, it's going to be stressed, right? You're putting your body in a state where it has to make decisions on allocation of resources.
Okay.
On a 1 to 7. Okay. So add them all up, add what you got. If you are 12 or under, yay, then you are in the green zone. Okay. If you are 13 to 28, you're in that yellow zone. Caution is warranted. And in fact, there's probably some work that you need to do with someone. Why am I talking about this stress, right? Let's go back to it. So all of this stress, if you're in that red zone, if you're 29 or over, now you've got a real, I know you're feeling it every day.
Yeah.
I know you're feeling it every day. My heart is going out to you right now. Because that is the kind of situation that leads to chronic illness of inflammation that leads to chronic fatigue syndromes. And you might find that the central nervous system, the central sensitivity syndrome package goes very strongly with a high allostatic stress load. And I can't diagnose, this is all information, but if you have already been diagnosed and you know you've got fibromyalgia, restless leg, irritable bowel, chronic fatigue syndrome, those are central sensitivity disorders that are highly related to an allostatic stress load that is very high. But also cardiometabolic disorders, high blood pressure, and insulin resistance, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, COP, the bottom line is where it comes out for you is based on your genetic weak link. And you might think, oh, Alzheimer's runs in my family, or this runs in my family. What runs in your family is these diseases are triggered when there's a high level of inflammation in my family. There's actually quite a small percent where it's only 1 to 2% of the population that has something that they can do nothing about, that has no influence of lifestyle, that is a true genetic issue. Almost everything else, like you might have something like maybe you've got a MTHFR mutation and you don't methylate and you're bad with detoxing and this and that. There are things you can do in your lifestyle to actually accommodate for that simply by supplementing differently. And there's research out there. So there's things you can do almost always. And even, I mean, I would say there's always something you can do to be the boss of your health and to shore up your foundations so that you have that you're maximizing your capability physically under whatever circumstance you are. It doesn't mean that we're going to be the pinnacle of health, but you can do something. And I believe that everybody can do something to heal their body to the point where their mitochondria are coming out of cell defense mode and into energy production mode, and you get to live your life.
I think vibrantly. Of the Energizer Bunny, right? When the battery dies down and when they put in the new battery, that's what I think of when I hear you talking about the mitochondria. So just picture the Energizer Bunny dying and then putting in the new battery. Yeah.
Well, that's how I used to express myself, because the way I felt, and I still very much remember right down into my toes how I felt back then. And this was over 7 years ago now. And I want to tell you, remember I told you my little yo-yo story there for a while. And I had been struggling with my weight on and off since I was 25. It's just been all over the place. But for the last 7 years plus, I have been exactly as I am now, my ideal weight. And I do feel like the Energizer Bunny, and people are looking at me like, I don't know how you get all that done a day. I don't know how you can keep going. And, and it's not like I don't get tired. I just go to bed when I do. But on
a cellular level, you have more energy than you ever did before.
Than I ever did.
Yeah.
Than I ever did. And I'm 50 this year. So I have more energy now, and I can play with my grandson in a way today that I couldn't play with my kids when they were his age.
Right.
That's crazy. I feel better in my body now than I did when I was 38. And I get it. People our age are going through menopause, perimenopause, and all kinds of weird stuff is happening. And it's like, I need to take all the medicines or do the things. Maybe, but I can tell you that the reason all those things are happening is often because estrogen is sort of that protective little nanny that covers over a lot of bad habits that we may have had that we didn't know we had, because our body needed to be sure that it could take care of children. The nanny's gone, and now we're out on our own, and all of a sudden we're facing all these consequences of our actions.
Exactly. But it is not too late. It's
never too late.
Not too late. If you're feeling the tug and you're like, I'm tired of living like this, I can't do it anymore. And what Stephanie is talking about, you're like, oh my gosh, that just makes so much sense. How can they find you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm just Stephanie Pazniokas. My Facebook group is Be the Boss, Be Well. And I have a gift for you if you're interested. We haven't really talked about it, but one of the biggest problems that I know women our age have, or people in general, everybody I know has this problem. My 17-year-old has this problem.
Yeah.
Everybody has this problem. Sleep.
Yeah.
Your cortisol has a circadian rhythm. Your cortisol is one of the stress hormones. If your stress is too high, your sleep's going to be impacted. If you don't get enough sleep, it actually causes your stress to be even higher, and it's a snowball, right? So, but there's a lot of things that we do behaviorally around sleep that are severely impacting the quality and depth of our sleep and our ability to heal and repair. And so I've got a list of 20 tips for better sleep that will get you started, and that will put you on my email list, and you're going to get the whole entire sleep guide after a few emails. And I'm very open about what you get. Even in the first email, say, here's the email you're going to get. And then once a week, I send you a whole bunch of gold. All right. And it's
That's
not
right.
just here's information. Every single week, you have a little mini action that you can do that you're going to get to practice all week long if you so choose, and it is going to help you with your overall health. That's BeTheBossGift.com.
And I'll put that link
Gift.
into the show notes as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And my Facebook group is Be the Boss, Be Well. That link will be in the show notes. And, if you're not sure, you want to do something, and another thing that I have that I run regularly throughout the year, it's called data-driven eating. If you just want to be open to and curious and know if the food you're eating and if the stress you're having and if the sleep you're getting or not getting is helping you or harming you, we get to look at your glucose levels. Because guess what? Your metabolic health, that's what your mitochondria are, but your mitochondria, and your glucose levels and all these other things all affect your metabolism. So what we get to look at is, hey, is how I'm living helping me or harming my metabolic health? And of course, glucose levels can tell us a lot. And it's not just the level, it's the pattern. I get to see a lot about what you're doing in your lifestyle that you might be able to, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. I point you in the direction of some experiments. You could say, what if I try this? You've got control data. You're going to do some experiments that you get to eat because a lot of it's food-based, and you're going to decide what they are. And it's just fun.
So at the retreat,
having fun at that.
At the retreat that Stephanie and I met at, someone was there who was doing her data-driven eating program, and watching her experiment and discover, even just in these short couple of days that we were together, and seeing her excitement over being able to see the immediate result of her experiment was really cool. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I care for my dad. He's a type 1 diabetic. I'm so totally familiar with the continuous glucose monitoring, but to see someone who's using it to experiment was really cool. Like, my dad uses it to survive, but to see someone using it for an experiment, to see what foods, what activities, what it does to me, like in real time, wicked cool. So if you're, and what I love about Stephanie is she is a scientist. It is all about the experiment. It's about the scientific method for her, this whole wellness journey.
But
so
it's fun.
It is fun.
Because it's an experiment. It's not like, oh, I failed because I didn't do the thing. It's like, I learned something from that. I learned that in this situation, I don't do the thing that I say I'm going to do. How can we change it so that I am more likely to do what I say I'm going to do?
Exactly.
It's fun. I am so sick and tired of the health and, perspective we all have is like, oh, my doctor said X, I've got to go try this thing again. I've got to do this horrible exercise that I hate. My gosh, how many of us are going to stick with something we hate doing? I'm not one.
I'm not. No.
Right.
Sure.
So I really do believe this health journey gets to be fun. It gets to be, it's a big learning journey, and you're getting to figure out your perfect lifestyle that you were designed to have.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me on the show. We could actually just continue talking forever, I'm sure. But again, if you're resonating with everything that Coach Stephanie is saying, highly recommend you click on the links in the show notes, get connected with her, become a part of her ecosystem, right? Become a part of the people who listen to the things that she has to say, because what she has to say just makes so much sense. Thank you, Stephanie.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for spending a little time with me today on the Lemon Balm Coaching Podcast. I hope you're walking away with something that sparks joy, hope, or a fresh perspective for your journey. If you loved today's episode, let's keep the conversation going. You can find more inspiration, coaching tips, and resources over at my website, lemonbalmcoaching.com. Don't forget to follow me on social media for encouragement and updates, and you'll find me on Instagram and Facebook at Lemon Balm Coaching. And hey, If you're looking for a supportive, uplifting community of amazing women just like you, come join us in the Reignite Your Flame Facebook group. It's a safe, welcoming space where we share, grow, and cheer each other on. And you can find the link on my website or just search for Reignite Your Flame on Facebook. Remember, honey, just be yourself. The world needs what only you have to offer. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.